240 degrees. And if you have a 15-pound pressure cooker, it'll boil at 250 degrees. That's why if you boil a chicken in a pressure cooker, it can get done a lot quicker because it's getting hotter. The water's hotter inside. If there were a way to increase the pressure, like for this one, there's a little weight that goes on there. If I press it down, I could increase the pressure to the point where the pan could blow up. If you have one of those glass pots, if you were to push down the lid tightly when it's boiling, you would see the boiling stop because you're putting just a little bit of pressure. You would stop the boiling until the water heated up to the new pressure boiling point, and then it would start boiling again. And if you pushed it down and got it to stop boiling and then it starts boiling again, you lifted the lid off, it would explode in boiling because it's instantly got to all explode in boiling to get down to that temperature of atmospheric pressure again. But you don't want to do that because it would actually erupt violently enough to possibly scald you. So again, don't do that at home. But now this pressure temperature relationship continues all the way up to 705 degrees. That's where water does something incredible. A recent discovery about this critical point of water is actually helping to clean up extreme chemical waste because critical point of water has properties that are being used to disassemble chemical waste. But all the way up to 705 degrees, if you could see in the container that could hold the pressure, and it's like 3,200 pounds at 705 degrees, so it wouldn't be a glass container, but if you could look through it, you would see a water layer and you would see a steam layer. You would see the vapor, water vapor, and you would see the liquid side. As soon as you get to a little over 705 degrees, the critical point of water, you no longer see liquid water. The line between liquid water and vapor disappears. And all that there are is microscopic globules of liquid water, 10 to 20, at certain pressures just above critical point, 10, 20 molecules of liquid water surrounded by all the liquid vapor, the water vapor. The properties of that. So it actually would look like mush. It looks like water mush. But the issue is if you drop the pressure on that critical water, it explodes with an energy that completely unleashes the remaining thermal energies as far as creating steam. So now it'll expand 5,000 times. So in other words, if this was critical, this much water, at critical temperature, if I then, and the steel vessel would have to be an inch thick to hold it if it was steel, and if I could somehow break that vessel, this amount of water would expand 5,000 times in volume, which is what an explosion does. And that much water is worth a half a stick of dynamite. This is half a stick of dynamite. So what does this mean? That means that if 2 pounds of water, a quart, is equal to 1 stick of dynamite. This is a pint, so it's only a half a stick of dynamite. And what does that mean? That means if this water heated up to over supercritical, and there's reasons to believe it went over 850 degrees, then if a crack in the earth occurred, and that water has a way of escaping to atmospheric pressure, the amount of energy released is equivalent to billions of hydrogen bombs of energy. We cannot fathom the amount of energy that's contained in half of the volume of our oceans being heated up to supercritical water temperature 10 miles below the crust, and the crust breaks, and the amount of energy that is coming up, it has the power, and again, Walt Brown, mechanical engineering, physics, MIT degree, you can work the calculations of the amount of energy. Is it big enough to launch rocks and debris into space? Yes. What would happen if you launched rocks and debris into space along with water? They would become comets. They would become asteroids. They would be out there, and that's why they're containing minerals from Earth that were super hot at one time. It explains so much of what they're finding out. The energy is there to do it. So the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in Genesis 6:5, and God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. God knew this was happening. He knew the wickedness of man was coming. There is a good argument against this theory. It is a theory that would basically, well, sooner or later, the crust would have to break even if man hadn't sinned. Well, I don't care what kind of flood scenario you put together. There was something going on to flood the whole earth, and God just knew. He knew what was going to happen. There was something about the sin of man that he triggered the break of the crust one day. The boat is big enough to fit inside of a full-size football stadium. You know, from front row seat to front row seat is how big it was. And it had 3 levels. And it was enough to put in all the kinds of, it was enough room for all the animals to go into. No windows to see out of because they're not going to want to see what's coming down. In other words, this had to be a heavy-duty boat to endure what the world was about to see. And he shut Noah in with the animals. People ask, I want to just make this one point. People say, how did he round them all up? Well, it's a fact that in the Sumatra quake of Christmas time, 2 Christmases ago, people were in shock that these elephants in Thailand that were, in Banda Aceh and these other places, they just ripped out their chain pegs out of the ground and they head for high ground. They're widely reported in the news media. Why did all these animals start heading for the hills? Because God told them. I mean, that wave is still way out there. The wave before it comes into the land is only a couple inches thick, a couple inches high above the normal. They're not going to feel anything different. They're not going to. The earthquake has already occurred. They felt the earthquake. The tsunami came to Thailand much later. God said, get out of Dodge. I'm dealing with humans on this one. And what did he do in Noah's day? I mean, the Bible doesn't say, except that all the animals went there. Our God told those animals, go get in the ark with Noah. Then he unleashed the power reserved in the subterranean waters when, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month and the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up. Now, if you don't understand that there's water underneath the crust, what does the Bible mean when it says all the fountains of the great deep burst up in one day? And the windows of heaven were open and the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Global rainfall. Now, people say, well, Kevin, you've just convinced me this 800-degree water under the crust is coming blasting out of this crack that would have scalded everybody. No. Because when the water, the liquid part of the supercritical and those globules of molecules of liquid water exploded themselves into steam, expanding the volume 5,000 times, and then going many more times by depressurizing the atmosphere, it would have cooled off. Because you depressurize any gas, it cools off. And not only was it cooling off because of that, but some of it, it says the windows of